When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I felt a weight in my chest, a kind of emptiness I had never known. I had raised my son with care, with love, thinking every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every small worry would be worth it. And yet, here I was, asked to leave the home I had lived in for decades. I sat down slowly, pretending I was calm, though inside my heart was breaking. I wondered how things had turned so cold, how the family I had nurtured could suddenly feel so distant. I wanted to speak, to explain, to beg, but the words caught in my throat. I just nodded and went to pack my things. It was a quiet, slow-motion kind of heartbreak, the kind that doesn't scream. I remember thinking, how did I become the one who had no place at my own table? The house was full of memories. I remembered mornings in the kitchen, the smell of tea and toast, my son running past, laughing, his little hands sticky with jam. I remembered birthdays, the way we used to sit together, the laughter echoing through these rooms. I had imagined this house as a place where love would always be present, where family meant forever. I never imagined that it could become a place of quiet judgment and cold silence. Yet now it was. I moved slowly, touching the walls as if to memorize them before I left. Every corner held a story, every door a memory I feared I might forget. I packed the smallest things first, my old shawl, my favorite cup, little trinkets that reminded me of happier times. I tried to focus on these small pieces, thinking maybe they could keep a part of this home alive for me. My son came in while I was folding clothes. He looked tired, anxious, and maybe a little guilty. I wanted to reach for him, to hug him and tell him that I understood, but he said nothing. He just watched me in silence. I raised you, I thought. I gave you everything. How could we end up here? He opened his mouth, maybe to speak, then closed it again. The room felt heavy, thick with unspoken words. I told him quietly, I will go. I don't want to make things harder. He nodded, still looking away. There was no anger in my voice, only a sadness that weighed me down. I wanted him to know I wasn't leaving because I wanted to, but because I had to. I remember stepping outside that day, feeling the sun on my face and the strange emptiness of the street. The neighborhood seemed the same, but I felt different. I had been part of this family for years, yet suddenly I was an outsider. My neighbors waved and I smiled, but their eyes held questions. I felt like I was walking through a fog. I kept thinking about my son, about the family dinners, the laughter, the quiet moments we shared. And I kept thinking about my daughter-in-law. I didn't hate her. I didn't even fully understand why she had asked me to leave. All I knew was the hollow ache of being unwelcome. I found a small room in a quiet part of town. It was nothing like my home, nothing like the space I had loved. The walls were bare, the floors cold. I sat on the bed, clutching my shawl, and I cried quietly. Not out loud, just little tears rolling down my cheeks. I thought about the past, about the love and care I had given. I thought about my son, and how life had changed so quickly. I wondered if he understood the depth of what had happened, if he knew what it felt like to be pushed away. I missed him already, even though he was only down the street. I kept myself busy, trying to fill the hours. I walked in the park. I cooked small meals. I read books I had never finished. I wrote letters I never sent, pouring out my heart onto paper. I wrote to my son, to my daughter-in-law, even to myself. The writing helped, somehow, though it didn't erase the pain. I started to see that life outside my old home was different. It was quieter, yes, but it was also a place where I could think, reflect, and understand. I began to see that I was not just a mother-in-law, not just a visitor in someone else's life. I was a woman who had loved, who had given, and who still had value. Weeks passed, and the sadness stayed, but it changed.
It became a quiet companion instead of a sharp pain. I learned to enjoy small things again, the way sunlight fell through my window in the morning, the smell of tea brewing, the sound of birds in the park. I started talking to neighbors, making small connections. I realized that even though my family had closed a door, there were other doors I could open. I began to see the world differently, with less expectation and more acceptance. But still, the memories came back. Every time I walked past my old home, I felt a pang. I remembered my son's laughter, my husband's voice, the family meals that used to feel so ordinary but were now priceless. I realized that life doesn't always go the way we imagine. Sometimes the people we love most will hurt us, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes not. But that doesn't mean we lose ourselves. That doesn't mean our love was wasted. It simply means life is complicated, and sometimes even the closest bonds can fray. I thought a lot about forgiveness. Not for them, not yet, but for myself. I had carried guilt and responsibility for decades, believing that if I had done more, loved more, been different, things would have turned out better. But slowly, I understood that life isn't about controlling every outcome. It's about giving our best, loving deeply, and accepting what comes. Forgiveness was not a single act. It was a process, a daily choice to release the bitterness and make room for peace. Then came the day my son visited me. He looked older, more tired, but his eyes carried something familiar: love, concern, regret. I greeted him quietly, offering him tea. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight between us heavy but softening. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, understanding that the apology was for more than just the words. It was for the years, the misunderstandings, the unspoken feelings. I told him, softly, "It's okay. Life is hard. We do what we can." And in that moment, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in months, a bridge slowly forming across the distance that had grown between us. I began to understand my daughter-in-law, too. She was young, ambitious, and trying to balance so much. Her world was different from mine, and sometimes we clashed. I realized that her asking me to leave was not an act of cruelty, but a reflection of her struggles and her way of coping. I did not condone it, but I forgave it. I forgave it because holding on to anger would only hurt me more. I forgave it because my heart was bigger than the space she occupied. And I forgave it because love does not always mean staying in the same house. Sometimes love means letting go, even when it hurts. Over time, I began to rebuild my life. I found joy in small routines: watering my little balcony garden, walking in the morning sun, reading letters from friends. I started attending a local community group where people shared stories, laughter, and meals. It was different from family, but it filled the emptiness in ways I hadn't expected. I realized that home is not just a place. It's a feeling, a sense of belonging. And that belonging can be found in many forms, if we open ourselves to it. I still think about the past, and I still feel the ache, but the ache is no longer crushing. It is a reminder of the love I gave, the life I lived, and the resilience I discovered within myself. I learned that families can be complicated, that love can be imperfect, and that sometimes we have to step away to truly see what matters. I learned that silence can be a teacher, that absence can be a gift, and that we are stronger than we realize. One evening, as the sun set over the quiet street where I now lived, I felt a calm I had not felt in a long time. I thought of my son, of my daughter-in-law, of the house I had left behind, and I smiled, because I knew that life continues, that love can take many forms, and that even when doors close, new paths open. I had lost a home, yes, but I had not lost myself, and that, I realized, was everything. I sometimes write letters I never send, to my son, to my daughter-in-law, to the past. I write not for them, but for me, to remind myself that love is not measured by proximity or approval. Love is measured by the depth of our care, the patience of our hearts, and the grace with which we move forward. I have learned that being pushed away does not diminish our worth. It does not erase the life we have lived or the love we have given. It simply teaches us how to find strength in unexpected places. I sit by my window and watch the world pass. I see children playing, neighbors greeting, life moving forward, and I am grateful for the lessons, for the memories, for the chance to start anew. I know now that no door closing can truly end the story of love, and no distance can sever the bonds we carry in our hearts. I am still a mother, I am still a woman who loves, and I am still here, alive with hope, quiet strength, and the knowledge that even when family shuts the door, life can open countless others. I never thought my family would shut the door. I never imagined I would feel the hollow ache of being unwelcome, but I also never imagined how much I could grow, how much I could heal, how much life could still offer. I have learned to live with sadness and to live with gratitude. I have learned that letting go is not giving up, but a way to find peace. And I have learned that love, true love, always finds a way to survive, even when the doors around us are closed. So, if you find yourself pushed away, left out, or unloved, remember this: your value is not diminished by someone else's choices. Your heart is still whole, your love still real, and your life still full of possibility. Open your eyes, open your heart, and trust that the world has space for you. You may not return to the same house, the same table, or the same people, but you can find home within yourself, and that is a home no one can take away. I am still here, I am still loving, I am still hoping, and slowly, quietly, I have found peace.